Welcome everyone to my Tuesday chess stream here on lichess and Twitch. International Master William Paschall here with you. We're streaming every weekday, usually Monday to Friday at 10 a.m. CET Central European Time. Let me get the board up here, the screen I should say. We're going to get started. We're playing blitz and classical chess with viewers, with commentary and analysis. Alright, got the webcam up, we're ready to go. So, good morning guys. Looks like everything's fine. Tuesday, December 6th, just for future reference. And welcome to Jeroen. He was absent yesterday with some important business, but he's back today. Our faithful moderator here, and a lot of help to me. I had to keep the trolls at bay yesterday, all on my own, but I managed quite nicely. Alright guys, we're going to be playing blitz in classical chess, which means time controls between 5 and 8 minutes. That's the limit, basically. Anything longer than that is just games that drag out over 20 minutes, so it's too much. And shorter than that, I really don't have time to talk about the games, so we prefer 5 to 8 minutes with a small increment from 3 to 5 seconds. The longer games, you can stick in the 3-second increment, and for the faster games, like 5-minute, you can use an increment as much as 5 seconds. Pi Standards, hello. And I welcome everybody to the Twitch stream here. Alright, somebody's playing I Play Drunk. That's a good handle, I like that. Watching the YouTube, lichess TV there. Sometimes I see some nightmarish games, but we'll see how I Play Drunk does. Anyway, yeah, so today's a normal stream. We're going to get started here. I've got 2 challenges already from 2 of our regular viewers, Andrea Peroni and Perone. And I'm sounding American again. And King Wiki. So forgive me when I go back and I do some kind of American pronunciations like Aronian or something, but I can't help myself. That's my roots. So I live in Budapest, Hungary. I am American. I've been living here in Europe, in Hungary, since 2004, so I'm kind of a permanent resident. And a lot of people ask me why I moved to Hungary. I'll just get it out of the way like right away today. I moved to Hungary originally to play chess full-time, and the tournament series here in Budapest still ongoing. So actually, I might play a Grandmaster tournament in the spring, in March or April. My chess team is going to pay my entry fee to a GM tournament. So that'll be a first for a while. I haven't played in any closed GM tournaments since 2010, so it's something to look forward to. Anyway, we're going to get started. It's Andrea Peroni, 8-3, Perone, 8-3. We are white. I'm going to play e4. Andrea has played a kind of Steinitz defense to the Roy Lopez or Spanish game against me before. Sometimes he's played some pretty sketchy sort of systems, gambiting pawns, and he needs to tighten it up a little bit. Not Peroni. Peroni tires. Perone. So, knight c6, bishop b5. I'm always playing the Spanish, unless it's Weird Wednesday, and, then we can play other stuff like the King's Gambit, but this is my main repertoire. Maybe I should broaden my repertoire a little bit, but I have other things to worry about than how I'm handling e4, e5. There's a lot of openings. Chess can keep you busy. I was talking yesterday that... Here we go. So I said Steinitz. It's a delayed Steinitz. I was talking yesterday about the fact that actually, contrary to popular belief, maybe my openings are the worst part of my game. Compared to a lot of other titled players, I think theoretically, I'm not that well prepared, and something I need to work on. But anyway, the openings are the easiest thing to improve, so that's the good news. d6, so, okay. Sometimes people play like bishop takes c6 here, and I think that it's reasonable. a6 isn't really that constructive a move. But objectively, probably bishop takes c6, b takes c, d4, f6. Something like that might be playable for black. c3 is the standard move. It's a little slow. If I castle, we have b5, bishop b3, knight a5. d4, which is like a weird Norwegian variation, they call it. Alright, I mean, I've played c3 in the past, and this is the first move I ever played, like 22 years ago against John Curdo. The first time I ever faced, like, the delayed Steinitz against a strong player. But it's a little bit, like, kind of quiet, you know. Honestly, I want to play more aggressively. c3 is kind of a standard, sort of slow positional move, and I'd like to play something sharper if I could, but I don't really... Nothing's really coming to mind. As I said, bishop takes c6 isn't that great. Now he played... So b5 and knight a5 leads to what's like reminiscent of a normal Lopez. Is there any way I can take advantage of this? I never had anyone do this before. It looks kind of early for black to be playing like c5, b5, knight a5. He hasn't even moved his king knight yet. So I guess we have to challenge in the center. But we're not castled either. Raw's the time. Gladys Troll, good to see you, man. As I mentioned earlier, we missed you when you weren't here for a while. But the last couple streams, the Troll has been here Sunday, yesterday, and today. So knight back to c6. Obviously, we can take on e5 and like trade queens. That looks pretty good. I really would imagine this is highly advantageous to white. Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Queen takes d8 check. King takes d8. On the other hand, I'm trading queens, and it's not that easy to get at his king. I wonder if there's not something better. Bishop back to b3 looks fairly strong. Now this is really critical. I mean, pawn takes pawn. Knight takes leaves him with a bad structure. I could do... Well, he could even do that, actually. It's maybe not that bad. But pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Queen takes queen check. King takes. Alright, we'll try it. I'm not that sure how big my advantage is here. I mean, we have something. We have some advantage. Black has some weaknesses. But he played f6. Okay, this is just maniacal. Not really recommended. I mean, I could play e6 and return the pawn here and have like a clear strategic advantage. That's how good my position is, really, after f6. You could definitely play e6 and just claim a clear advantage based on pawn structure and f6 messing up black's development and whatnot. Andrea's playing too fast. He has a tendency to play too fast. Saronche, welcome, man. Good to have you back with us. So this is why, guys, I asked for the increment. I'm spending a lot of time describing the position, talking about possibilities. Not stuff I need necessarily. Stuff to benefit the viewers. And that's why we're not playing rated games. It gives me time to talk quite a bit about the positions. So e6 would be like a very safe move here. And then it's hard to say like which way I should take. If I take on f6, he remains with an isolated pawn. If I take on d6, he remains with a pawn on f6, blocking his development. So everything is good. It's very hard to decide between these three moves, basically. The f file, maybe he could try to benefit from. This is a tough call. I mean, I like all these moves. Pawn takes, bishop takes, knight c3. That's a pretty strong diagonal. I don't know, I'll take an f6. Leaving him with a weak pawn on d6. Should I take the time to play like h3? Interesting question. Now, to prevent like bishop g4. Is that something I really need to do here? It's probably worth considering. We have time for this. Bishop g4 is really a little bit unpleasant for white. One could make an argument, a definite argument here, that h3 is weakening. I'm gonna go out on a limb and agree, but I think that it's probably worth the weakening because it's very annoying to meet bishop g4. Perhaps I could play something like knight to d2, but then my queen doesn't really have any squares. And it's very easy for him to build up on the pin. Bishop g4, knight e5 starts to get kind of unpleasant. So I thought this is a prophylactic move that's marginal, but probably worth playing. Now he goes g6, realizing that his bishop on e7 was kind of restricted. I think black has quite a few long-term problems. Bishop f4. Just the d6 pawn is weak now. Rouse the Time says it's afternoon in India. You're awake for 28 hours in a row. Gladys Troll, seriously? Well, Troll trying to get high. Naturally high. Well, you should start having hallucinations soon. I know I would. Chess marathon. But you're not talking about a chess marathon on lichess. Just a personal chess marathon. Yeah, Andrea likes to sacrifice stuff and play wildly, but I'm a little too good for that. I'm not going to be too forgiving. If he's giving me material, we're going to hold on to it. Now we've got a chance to grab another pawn. We also have bishop b3 check and many forks with like knight to g5 at some point. But I do have to be careful about my development. You know, maybe grabbing the pawn is a little bit greedy. A little bit greedy to take on d6. He can defend himself now, but there are other problems. Like he could play knight e8 in this position. That's not a move that he would normally, be expected to play, because this particular player doesn't like, he doesn't like to defend. He likes to attack and throw things at you. We have queen d5 check and queen takes c6. But at the end of the day, it appears my f4 bishop is hanging. So we could try something like bg5 first. Then queen d7 would appear to defend. Alright, I'm running out of time. We have a number of moves. Knight d5, bishop g5, queen d5 check. This is kind of a pity because I really wanted my knight to go to g5, and so, but I can't do everything. I'm up a pawn. I have slightly better development and safer king. But maybe this move isn't the best. There was queen d5 check, king h8, queen takes c6. The problem there, it looks like I'm winning a piece, but black plays bishop d7. That's why calculation is just really important in chess. I mean, it's not enough to be, have a good strategic sense. You get into a situation like that, you have to calculate. Now it's different. Queen d5 check. Rook f7. Queen takes c6. Bishop b7. And another issue where my queen is like trapped. Well, that's kind of sick. Bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, my queen is trapped in the middle of the board on c6. Kind of in the middle of the board there. Again, queen d5 check, rook f7, bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, queen takes c6, bishop b7, my queen is trapped. It's really hard to believe, but true. So we really have to think fast now. I don't know. Maybe just a solid move. The solid move. I don't like it that much. Bishop h6. Andrea has a 5-minute time advantage. I'm spending all my time thinking about extravagant variations. My queen gets trapped on c6. It reminds me of a game I played on Sunday. Every Sunday I do a simul game here. Most Sundays, like this Sunday I'm leaving for Prague to play poker, but most Sundays I'm doing a simul 6:30 p.m. on Sundays here on lichess, 20 to 25 players. Like this Sunday I had a game on the white side of a Benko. It was a really crazy position. I ended up using all my time in a lot of my simul games. Basically, on this particular game, I spent like 4 minutes thinking about one move where I just, at the end of the lines, I was just like losing a piece. I just couldn't believe it, but there was nothing I could do. Now knight d5, okay. Also bishop b3 looks like a reasonable move. Not a lot of time for niceties here. We have a pawn up, we have a safer king. I encourage you guys, when you think about the game, to talk to yourselves quietly. You know, like the way I'm doing here. There's a very good book by Jonathan Rowson called Chess for Zebras. And I think in that book he talks about self-talk, which is a very, very valuable concept. Other strong mind game experts have also talked about this quite a bit. Hasib Qureshi, who's a poker player, talks about self-talk quite a bit. And we are now thinking about queen c3. That's not a good move. All right, no time. I'm just hanging on, man, with my extra pawn. 12 seconds. He's trying to flag me, but it's increment. I'm a blitz player from way back, and I can play, you know, when I have very little time left. 3 seconds is just enough. It's like, what is that book? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Don't panic. That's the maxim in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and in blitz chess too. It's very important. The single most important concept is don't panic. Black is dropping his whole structure here. Now Andre is not that experienced. He needs more time to perfect his blitz game, realize the limitations of the power of the clock versus the power of position. I spent a lot of time playing blitz in a cafe for money 20 years ago, and well, basically one of the things I learned was that, you know, I know that time is money, but other than that, I mean, it's really more important that you control the position. And this is something I learned not just in blitz chess, but in tournament chess. You know, a lot of strong players that I played with would get into very vicious time pressure, but they're good blitz players, and it's more important that you use your time. You know, time is like, they say time is money, right? Well, time is a valuable asset, you know, and chess is a thinking game. So I firmly believe that people play too fast and they don't use their time optimally. In increment chess in particular, it's not necessarily bad to let your time get down. So, okay. Game over. Stalemate is the last. Not easy to stalemate with a knight on the board, by the way. But I had the position under control for the most part this game. I had some questions about the way I played the late opening. Maybe around the point where, I don't know, I decided to play h3. I'm not really sure. I'm also not sure after this crazy move f6. But anyway, Andrea, like, you should just take back with the pawn on e5 and go into this ending after queen takes d8, check, king takes d8. I'm not sure it's that bad for black. It's slightly better for white, but maybe not lost. Have you ever watched another chess stream? Yeah, of course. Occasionally, not regularly though. All right. But like live, not too much. Occasionally, I'll watch like replays of the other chess streamers. So, King Wiki, we will play white again. There was this one time when I was getting trolled. We played e4. Let's play d4. But she's not a she. She's a he. It's an Italian name. So, d4 c6, and we're going to play the white side of the Slav. My favorite streamer is Chess Network, right? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He's a good guy. Knight f3. Yeah, we like Chess Network. I recommend him. He's good. I think I actually played him in a tournament game. I can't remember if I drew or lost. I was very angry about the result because it was like the first or second round of some open tournament years ago. I don't know exactly when it was, the late 90s or 2000. And Chess Network was probably around 2150. I was like a 2400. And I don't really remember the game. I just remember it was one of the first rounds I was paired down and I didn't win. And I'm blocking it out. But he played a good game. I couldn't beat him. I don't remember if it was a loss or a draw. Maybe it's in the closet with the score sheets somewhere. Don't really remember the game. We have this Freudian thing that makes us block out traumatic experiences. Well, I call it Freudian, but it's actually like just a kind of deep, psychological protective barrier that we have bad memories, we suppress them, and sometimes when I lose games, it's like I have a good memory for my games, but sometimes when the games that I lose, I will repress them, and that could be the case there. So anyway, g6, but in that case, it would have been like, I would have been angry if I drew or lost against someone like 200 or 300 points lower. We played this game with Shryan the other day. Shryan M, one of our viewers here. g6 is black's most solid line against this quiet queen c2. Queen c2 is not really dangerous for black, but I have some gambits against d takes c4 that I play, and that are quite unexplored theoretically. And also, I really haven't updated my like mainline Slav theory. With white, I'm kind of putting it off, so Queen c2 is kind of a stopgap to just shore up my repertoire until I have time to really repair it and keep it up to date, because a lot of my opening theory is a few years old, since I wasn't playing chess a lot. Over the last, I would say between 2010 and 2015, I hardly played at all. Why do poker players remember bad beats so much better than wins? I don't know, but as a very competitive person, I can tell you that I don't think it's just poker players. I think that if you're very self-confident, you expect yourself to win, you're like A-type personality, wins are just like expected, and we just like store it in the closet very quickly, and type A personality people especially. I'm not necessarily type A, but I'm very competitive. I think the wins are just expected, and the losses are like traumatic. It's not necessarily good, but it is a means of forcing yourself to perform well. Okay, so here yesterday against Shryan, I had the same exact position, oddly enough. I don't know if King Wiki knows about that, or if he's like prepared for me or something. It's odd that he chose the exact same move order with bishop f5 and queen b6. The other move there I was looking at with one of my students yesterday is actually knight a6. This is a very interesting line. Knight a6, queen takes b7, knight b4, queen takes b4, e5, with serious complications that may be favorable for black. So black temporarily sacrifices a piece, but gets it back with the dynamic initiative. But anyway, like I played c5 against Shrine yesterday. e3 apparently is considered to be a slightly more accurate move here. So I guess I'll give it a shot. At least statistically. No, I don't know. I think ultra competitive people just, they don't celebrate the wins that much. They just expect the wins and they punish themselves when they lose. It's kind of like reinforcing. It's behavioralist, sort of giving the rat electric shocks when it does something bad, and then a very little treat when it wins. Self-behavioral therapy, I would call it. And I'm guilty of it, if it's a bad thing. I definitely don't. If I win a lot of money in EPT Prague, I'll probably I always told myself if I had some huge score, I'd have a big party for everybody, but probably I'd be like, oh, all right, whatever, and never have a big party if I won the EPT Prague or something. Just kind of I'd forget about it after a while. It's just the way it is. I don't know. It's very strange. But other people, not everybody's the same. Some people really know how to celebrate their victories. So yeah, this structure, knight bd7, pretty solid. As I mentioned earlier, the knight can go to a6 sometimes. Well, but I'm not sure what's so much better about this position than the other position. I'm not committed to playing c5. I have a little more flexibility. Of course, you have to watch out this doesn't happen like bishop c2. King Wiki, I don't know if he's been working on this variation, or I don't remember playing this with him. Actually, we've played a lot of games, not so much recently though. Now here he might have made a mistake. Here I can take on d5 and improve my pawn structure. I'm not sure that it's devastating for black, but theoretically it is bringing another pawn of mine toward the center. But if you want exciting play, then I don't recommend this variation. Really, queen c2, it's actually far more interesting if they take on c4. That's my main point, but nobody goes there. Nobody wants to go there against me. Taking on c4 used to be like the main line, but now everybody plays g6. Okay, well, rook c1 looks like a decent move. We're threatening to get on the 7th. Or not. Since if I take on d5, he'll take with the knight. Actually, this is probably not a bad exchange for white, chipping away at his center. But he's got good control of e4. My pawns aren't running through the middle like an NFL halfback or something. It's not that easy here. He's got good control of e4. Knight comes to d5. I am stopping him from playing knight e4 by having pressure on d5. It's a little bit better for white. Kind of a torturous little advantage. Anyone know how Magnus looks in poker? I wasn't aware that well, I guess everybody has tried poker. It's so trendy in the last 15 years. How he looks in poker. I didn't know he even played poker, but I suppose everyone has tried it. Okay, now Wiki is just dropping the game, basically. Abandoning his a-pawn. A tragic loss. I don't think this is a calculated sacrifice of any kind. I thought the other rook, obviously, rook f c8 leaves black just slightly worse. And the playable position a little bit unpleasant. I think he jumped the gun with knight e4. This was a little bit early, the knight e4, and dropped a rook. The King Wiki, good opening though. I mean, it's a rock solid system you're playing, and you should be able to equalize. Should be able to maintain equality. Atatsuar, constant change. These guys are pretty tough. Now the strong players are coming. We've got 2083 and a 2186. I'm getting white every game. I think it's a troll. They're trolling me, making me play white every game. Look, I'm not going to complain. It's like a utopian fantasy where I get white every single game. Lost concentration. Well, oftentimes like one blunder like disturbs your concentration, and then a second blunder follows. So, you know, you dropped a pawn, and then you got I don't know, you lost your composure and then dropped the rook. That may be the case, or you just simply made a blunder. But it's a very important point that if you do make a mistake, poker and in chess, I mean, I guess in poker things kind of change more quickly. The situation often changes more quickly. You know, you go from being a chip leader to short stack more quickly, or crazy things happen more quickly. There's more variance. In chess, it's more steady usually. But anyway, in either case, when the situation changes, you know, when your standing in the game changes, like you make a blunder, it's a very, very critical moment psychologically, how you deal with that. I mean, if you can reset yourself psychologically after the blunder to you know, accepting the new situation, adapting to it, and excelling in it, you know, I'm pretty good about it compared to most people. I think I have friends who are like perfectionists who play the opening perfectly, and often those people freak out if they make the slightest little mistake or something. You know, these perfectionist type of people can't handle sometimes, you know, making a mistake, and they'll give up more easily. I'm not really a perfectionist, you know, I'm just a hard kind of player, a tough player, a good defender, and I'm used to making some mistakes and having to dig myself out of bad situations. So I can kind of land on my feet when I make a blunder or mistake better than some players. But I think what I'm trying to make the point is when black dropped the pawn on a7, he maybe became upset, and that often causes a collateral mistake. Rook c7 in this case, losing your concentration when you make a blunder, for example. Alright, I'm tempted to play h3. Oh, I have a funny story, guys. I was playing the Hungarian team championship, and I don't really know the theory that well with h3, but there is a funny thing. I couldn't remember these games that I thought I remembered. On Sunday, I was playing a tournament game against a 2200 player. The problem was I expected to play someone else, so I wasn't prepared for this guy, and he was prepared for me. And he had an opening against the King's Indian. He had a variation set up and ready, and I didn't know what he plays even, you know. So when we got to the board, he had a kind of preparation advantage, and we reached this King's Indian position. He played h3 instead of bishop e2, and then where are we? Yeah, h3. I ended up playing knight a6 in that position, hoping that he would play bishop e2 and transpose to a normal King's Indian, but he ended up playing bishop g5. So anyway, to make a long story short, I did remember my games in this variation because some games I had were really, really long ago, and the thing was, this variation with h3 and bishop g5 is somewhat similar to the same-ish King's Indian with f3 and bishop g5. And for some reason, during the game, I was trying to remember these old games I had, and I was misremembering a couple of games I had with black against f3 and bishop g5, as if they were this variation with h3 and bishop g5. And I became very frustrated in the process of trying to remember these games over the board. because I was like, that's unbelievable. I can't remember my own games, you know? So it turned out that the reason I couldn't remember the games was because they weren't in that variation with h3. They were in this variation with f3 and bishop g5. Like a totally different position and similar, but not the same. And so that's why I couldn't remember it, because it wasn't correct. But the funny thing was, I ended up looking up like my own games in this variation in ChessBase. And I was surprised to see that, of all things, not only did I not have any games against h3 bishop g5 with black in the database, of all things I didn't remember, I had one game with white, in fact, in that line, and it was against none less than Maxim Dlugy. Apparently I had played Dlugy back in like 1995 in Las Vegas, and the game had, I remembered playing him, but I didn't remember that I had been playing the Makaganov system with white just very briefly, and played, it was around 96 or 97, I don't know, and I played just a couple games of this h3 system with white, and they just totally wiped from my memory the fact that I played this position with white against Dlugy. And looking back on the game, I had a very negative memory of it, because I thought, you know, I lost and it was like a bad game. But looking at the game now, I was better. Like, I had a good opening. Dlugy didn't really know the theory that well, neither did I, but Maxim is like not really a King's Indian player. He actually plays the what should I do here, by the way? h4, knight d2. He actually plays the Queen's Gambit accepted. That's his main opening, and then he played the King's Indian against me, I guess, because he wanted to try to play for a win that day. Sometimes the Queen's Gambit accepted is really pretty difficult to play for a win. I'm not really sure where I'm at here in this position. King f1 or something? Does that seem reasonable? It's a little crazy to play king f1. We could sack a pawn with like, nah, bishop g4, knight takes g2. Let's try to be creative. I don't know, king f1. This is probably not recommended, but I'm going to give it a try. So, it's funny how our memory plays tricks on us. Of all things, I actually had played the position with white, and I didn't remember, instead of black. And I actually had a good game against Dlugy, but... And ironically, Dlugy did the setup that I was going to do against this guy. Like this very non-theoretical kind of flexible sort of setup that I should have done in the game against the kid, but call him a kid. He's like a 25-year-old guy. It's what life is filled with ironies. But I'm getting to the point now where my chess career is long enough that Dlugy was a great blitz player, but I'm getting to the point where I'm not remembering all my games. I used to remember all my games. That's not the case anymore. So now what's the deal here? Bishop g4. h4 is awfully interesting. No. I almost made a very serious mistake here. Yeah, I need to play knight e4. I think this is the right idea. I mean, too many pieces coming into like d3 and the e4 square. This is key. But I like the way that Tatsar played this. Pretty speculative to play the way I'm playing with like king f1. So anyway, that's the funny story. That of all things I remembered, it wasn't the game when I actually played, was the other color in this position. It's just crazy. Like, I couldn't remember any theory for black, let alone the fact that I actually played the position for white once, and even probably more than once. But it was like, I played the system for maybe like a couple months in a few games, and then after that loss to Dlugi, and another loss to another guy who was pretty weak, I think I just became like disenchanted with the whole variation. We often like attribute the fact that we lost to the opening, but the truth is, in most cases, that's probably not what it was. You know, you're blaming it on something. I didn't lose to Dlugi because of the opening. It had nothing to do with the opening. I had a good position. It was just like my consequent play later. I didn't see enough like tactical possibilities. I played a little bit recklessly too. When I look back on my old games when I was younger, my biggest criticism of my own play was that I was very reckless. But on the other hand, when you're younger, you also, you know, have more, like a stronger spirit of creativity. So one could call it recklessness and one could call it creativity. They're just packaged under different names. Dlugi played the London. Well, I think Maxim hasn't been a professional chess player for a long time. He was in business and a lot of other stuff. So he maybe plays the London system. He's a legendary blitz player, you know, and I'm going to take here. So, I mean, the thing about Maxim, he can play anything. I mean, he's just a legendary, like, 1 minute player from way back. Before 1 minute was even trendy, he was a great 1 minute player. Okay, this position is getting a little bit sort of weird. Black is threatening e4. Losing my blockade. And if I try to defend e4 with bishop f3, he's got bishop check. Probably worth considering sacrificing a pawn in this position. Pretty crazy idea. We do have time. I don't like taking on f4. I'm willing to just let the knight live there for a while. All right, we're going to try something. Try something creative. I'm not really comfortable with my position at the moment, you know, so there's no time for b3. He gets e4, and I want to stop e4. So I'm willing to take risks to achieve that aim of controlling e4. I think it's a worthy cause. Some complicated tactical lines there with like e4 and bishop takes c3, but in every line I saw it looked like white was keeping things under control. And now the bishop on c4, it's looking okay, but you're giving me now the e4 square. We have some kingside threats with h4. h7 is controlled. d5's under control. I can play queen d2, rook d1, over and protect d5. And my king is relatively safe on g1. That was the original plan, to put the king here, play h4. And it looks like it's a valid pawn sacrifice. I'm sure black has some fighting ideas, but practical defense for white here, sacrificing a pawn. And he needs to be careful about his bishop, like b5, b3, bishop a6, a4, not allowing the pawns to roll. He's getting in time pressure too. Yeah, Dlugi was live on Russian TV, the New York chess champion. Well, he could have been. I mean, you know, there's like the New York State Championship and stuff, and I mean, it's possible. Maxim's playing a bit He's not like totally now. It used to be like he doesn't play at all, but seems like he came back, sort of half came back and plays occasionally. No, it's possible he like won the New York State Championship or something. I mean, or maybe they're just making that up. I mean, who knows? So wow, Black is making an attempt on my life here. C6. That's no fun. That's no fun. Man, what am I going to do now? This changes everything. There's no time for d6, rook f6. Looks like I have to take. A nice move, c6 with rook b8. That's a really fantastic idea for Black, honestly. I mean, extremely deep. Do I want to take with the knight? Doesn't look right, does it? What does look right here? h4. Yeah, this is unbelievable how he activated his rook. That I didn't count on. I have rook d7. Maybe it's not a big deal. Bishop h7 check, followed by rook d7. There's also bishop h7 check, knight e4. Not really sure what's going on here. Black is up 2 pawns. He's got the beautiful structure. The beautiful structure, but pawn is pawn, right? I really like c6. Finds another only move. And now what? Really sure what I'm supposed to do here. Try to keep it complicated? Man, this is a tough one. Half tempted to play king h2. That looks ridiculous. I'm not sure how to make progress. If there is a way to make progress. He's got me just paralyzed. This looks really bad. Bishop takes c6. Oh. Okay, I had knight e4, and I'm going to get mated or something. Let's take this guy. This guy on f4 is gotta go. Now I'm nearly getting mated. Unfortunately. Well, he went into panic mode, didn't recapture on d1, but he's practically winning before. Now it's not so easy. I don't know what's going on this, but it was a good game. Black was on the verge of winning. Not the first time a Tatsuara got the better of me. Yeah, I think you were on the verge of winning with best play there. So we're white every game. It is a troll where I'm white every game. I mean, Dlugi is not like a lifetime London system player. I guess he's given up playing mainline openings since he's kind of semi-retired. Alright, so we're going to play white every game. We're playing the English today. For this game, I like to mix it up. Now, constant change does the same kind of weird kind of reverse Sicilians every game with both colors. I'm thinking, how can I get him out of that? Alright, well, there's some ways to get him out of that. I mean, he can't force the reverse Sicilian no matter what. It is a reverse Sicilian, but an open variation. So here, if I play g3, he'll get d5, and he likes to play those positions. So I want to put him in a different environment. I'm going to play d4. I recommend, if you play the English for white, check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training. I did do a couple games on the 4 knights English with bishop c5 for black. I intend to do more videos about openings and stuff on my channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube, over time, but lately I haven't had any new ones up. Knight takes d4, and this variation is one that I played a lot. Kind of similar to the Scotch in spirit, but we've played c4. So d6, this is good to see. It's a very passive move for black, and generally speaking, white is better in these kind of positions. I don't have to exchange on c6, but this move has a pretty good score. One of my strongest nemesis, is that a word? In New England chess, for the time I spent in Boston and whatnot, was a very strong IM with the name Igor Foigle. And Igor, from Ukraine originally, was GM strength. He's getting old now, like all of us. But he was a GM strength IM, and he played this with white, this system. Very brutal in the hands of a strong positional player, this type of variation. I mean, here I could even play c5 probably to triple-ize constant changes pawns. But I do recall, Foigle getting something like queen a4. He loved to play queen a4 in these type of positions, and sometimes the queen actually goes to a5. This is really weird, but it paralyzes black. The strange queen on a5, the Foigelian concept. The queen on a5, it like harasses the base of the pawn chain on c7. It's constantly attacking this guy. It has lateral mobility like this. Now, this is a kind of like strategic idea that only very, very well trained players know about. This idea of playing like queen a5. I remember once watching Foigle play this similar variation against the Filipino IM, Enrico Sevillano. And honestly, like, Sevillano, he's a good player, but he's a totally different style, like more tricky and like tactical, not like strategically trained. And stylistically, in that kind of matchup, usually the strategic player has a pretty big advantage, and he just massacred. Foigle just massacred Sevillano. They were like two players with like similar ratings, but it was awful, like, to watch. He just tied him in knots and tortured him like he was, you wouldn't guess these two players had almost the same exact rating. But a6, there's a move that's not necessarily required in this position. I'm not sure you need to play that. Okay. Excuse me. Well, we're going to have to castle at some point. And structurally, black's in bad shape. Along the d file, this pawn island here is difficult to use. Something similar happened to Sevillano. As I mentioned, c5, maybe c5, d5 isn't so bad for black. Who's the best U.S. chess player now? Well, Robson. Are you kidding me? Who's Robson? Dude, you're talking about like Nakamura, Caruana, and Wesley So now playing for the U.S. I mean, Robson doesn't come into the picture. All right. I mean, Caruana played for Italy, but he's American. And Nakamura is half Japanese, but he's like American. And Wesley So's not American, but he's taken up U.S. residency with the help of Sinkfield. So he's playing as an American. So Queen C8, this is the move I was waiting to see. I mean, that seems like pretty much forced. So now what do we do? This is the only chance for black. Queen c8. Try to trade the white square bishops. I was thinking maybe in some lines bishop g5 and even like trade on f6 and play with good knight versus bad bishop might be possible. What would Feugl do? b4 is interesting. Just permanently shutting it down. Constant change very fast. I wanted to play like a slow kind of plan like h3 and prevent black from maneuvering. I mean, h3 is not bad. h3, c5, e4. White is better. Black starts to have maybe some chances. Actually, bishop g5 is sort of interesting. He'll just play h6 in that case, though. At some point you missed a direct bishop h7 check instead of rook d7. Yeah, I looked at that. I just couldn't calculate it fast enough. Nakamura isn't Japanese, dude. I played with him when he was like 5 years old. I mean, it's like, my kids are American, but they lived their whole life in Hungary. I don't know, you can call him Japanese because he's half Japanese. His father's Japanese. Does that make Hikaru Japanese? He lived his entire life in the United States since he was born, or since he was like 2 years old or something. Caruana is not Italian. He lived his entire life in the United States, and he has Italian relatives, but he's not Italian. He never lived in Italy till he was like 21 years old or 18 or something. He just moved to Italy because his father didn't like the U.S. Chess Federation. He's 100% American. That's like saying Sylvester Stallone is Italian. Yeah, I mean, he's Italian, but he lives his entire life in the United States. Queen c8, I'm German then, or English or whatever. But Wesley So is really a Filipino. I don't know what to do, guys. I'm getting a little bit low on time here. b4. b4 is kind of weakening, though. I don't know if we want to go there. I was thinking of playing something more solid. Robson's like half Asian, so we can call him some kind of other nationality, probably. It's just kind of like racist. I mean, these people, Nakamura, Caruana, Robson, they've lived their entire lives in the United States. So I consider them 100% American, regardless of like where their father's from or something like that. Wesley So is not. He's imported by Rex Sinkfield, and as a lot of other players were. Quang Liem, I thought, was brought by bought or brought. What are we talking about? Quang Liem, I think, is also like owned by Rex Sinkfield, as far as I knew. So I don't know what's going on with that, but the U.S. Chess Federation, I mean, you don't have to be born in the United States to play on the U.S. team or to represent the United States Chess Federation or any other country. Money is you can go to FIDE and change your federation for the right price. I didn't change my federation to Hungary because it's more valuable to have like a foreign federation. If I play in a round robin tournament or something like that, it's useful for organizers here that I'm a foreign federation player. H6, it's a little bit weakening. He wants to play this or something, like knight H7. DST, what? You played a tournament tonight? It was 6 games. I didn't play in the first game and scored 4.5 out of 5. Like rapid chess? What time control are we talking about there, DST? My foigled queen on A5 might have to recirculate back to the center at some point, in some way. It doesn't really have too many squares along the 6th rank at the moment. I have to be thoughtful. But it's amazing how difficult it is to do anything about that queen on A5. Foigle was like a Petrosian clone. He plays very well King's Indian English type stuff with white. But on the other hand, he also played some interesting stuff like the Peertz defense, which Petrosian didn't really do. Okay, so now C5. This was to be expected. We've been expecting you, C5. Now at some point, again, probably getting my queen back in the game will be a consideration. It's not in danger of getting trapped at the moment, but it could. It could get trapped. Who is the best Hungarian player now? Well, Rapport. Rapport is the highest rated. I don't know if he's really the best. Seems like he's performing the best now. Polgar quit. Zoltan Amashi hasn't really been in great form the last couple of years. He's kind of gone down a little bit. Amashi's under 2,700 consistently. He maxed out around low 2,700. I think Amashi's down to like 2,670-ish. The Rapport's higher, and Leiko, just is like a chess tourist. He's totally non-threatening. So it looks like Rapport is the only super serious Hungarian GM. Wow, it's like a scotch with the knight on B6. My queen is stuck on A5. We got to get it back in the game at some point. You can play knight D5. I'm going to lose on time. Really should bring my queen back in the fold here. Is F5 going to be a question? This is a weak, panicky kind of move, which helps black a little bit. Trading pieces should ease black's pain, but I'm getting in time pressure, and I'm just surprised by that exchange, though. I thought he would take with a knight, probably. This looks a bit more dynamic to imbalance the pawn structure. Two bishops like imbalanced pawn structures. Keep that in mind. But constant change fighting here. Now, of course, he has another concept in mind. But this looks pretty good for white. He'd like to trade bishops. And by trading off my bishop pair, he would really negate a lot of my advantage. I don't know who Constant Change is or even where he's from. But he's like a very good practical player without a lot of theoretical knowledge. And G5's not a good idea. Very good practical player. Well, not with that move. That wasn't his best move. Maybe it was a mouse slip. It could be. But now things got a lot worse for black. His bishop's very bad. This was a catastrophic mistake. G5. He wouldn't normally do something like that. Black made his position a lot worse. It's not impossible it was a mouse slip. I mean, it doesn't look like a move like most people would seriously consider playing. But until that move, I thought black had some chances. Judit was the best Hungarian player I ever think. Ever, I think. Well, I mean, damn. It's hard to agree with that. I mean, Leko played for the World Championship, man. I mean, Judit was great. Clearly the greatest woman player ever. But she was never in the top 5. Everybody likes to diss Leko, you know, because he has a lot of draws and stuff. But he played a World Championship match that was epic, you know, against Kramnik, and almost became world champion. You know, Judit never almost became world champion. I mean, there's a pretty big margin of difference there. We can all diss Leko because of his style, but he came damn close to being world champion, and he deserves some credit for that. Yeah, so bishop g6, bishop g4. Maybe I should go bishop g4 before there's no more time to do it. Constant Change wants to put his queen on g6, and this pretty much ends that fantasy. If I play king h2 right away, be a slightly different story. Now it's king h2. Wow, man. Very methodical player, but man, this is a bad situation. For black strategically. Still annoyingly difficult to finish black off here. I didn't see a way to break through directly. So we managed to take it down. Yeah, Portish is a good guy. Yeah, he's an argument for being greater than Polgar too. All right. No, I like Portish a lot. He's a major gentleman. We've got games here. Vasilikos needs to re-challenge. If he wants to play, he or she needs to re-challenge me to a time control with the increment. So Vasilikos, I'd be happy to play, but you have to make it like 5-3 or longer. Papits, this player, needs to challenge to something reasonable, like maximum of 8-3. 15-2 is like half an hour game. We don't have time for that. So I'm going to play Aussie passes, wait for those guys to change their challenge to something more reasonable. Hey there, just tuned in to calm down. To calm down. Yeah, you guys forgot about Marazzi. Maybe Karl Schlechter was technically a Hungarian. Charoshek too. A lot of historical players who are very strong. So what's the question? Who is the top 5 world at the moment? I don't know, man. They're changing like... Now with the up-to-date ratings, these things are changing like you change your underwear. It's hard to keep track. Kramnik was like number 2 a while ago. Now he's probably like number 4. I'm not sure. You'd have to check somebody. Somebody else might know. I haven't checked the updated top 5 FIDE ratings. Karyakin must have gained a boatload of rating points for his World Championship match draw. Okay, Osip passes. Oh no, you're not playing. This similar position I had against... ooh, that's a different position. Okay, Knight f6 is interesting here, but I don't think it's that good. H4. Okay. That seems like a good try in this position. Vladimir Kopian played like e4, c5, knight f3, g6, h4 against me, which is something that Spassky had played once. But after a3, h4, I don't have knight f6 here because of e5. There's no knight g4. I hate to play h5 in such positions. It's seeming like it feels like a slight concession, but objectively, a3 and h4, if we really think about it, you know, it seems like apples and oranges a little bit, but nevertheless playable. I think that stylistically a3 is a slow positional variation, and h4 is like a sort of maniac type of aggressive move. So, yeah, b4. Okay. I don't really get it. Bishop g7, I mean, g6 is the recommended move against a3 by theory. Now, h4 is speculative, but it's surely not a move that's considered to be the main line. Do you agree that if you become a grandmaster, you should get awarded from the FIDE Chess Federation $1 million? 500 for the first title? I am absolutely. That's a great idea. But instead, you have to pay them for your title, or somebody has to pay on your behalf to award you the title. It's sort of perverted. I mean, that's the problem with the World Chess Federation. I mean, it became this like corrupt, perverted organization. Its intention was good, but ever since like Campomanes took over in the mid-80s, it's become like a corrupt organization, and it's gotten worse under Ilumzhinov, of course. There should be like a small fee, perhaps at the most, you know, for awarding a title, but there shouldn't be any significant cost, you know. It's like an honorarium. Why are people being forced to pay for something that's like an honorarium? It loses its point, you know. I know a lot of people who like refused even to like pay for the FIDE master title, for example. I mean, in most cases, like your chess federation will like pay the fee for you. You won't even know it exists, but it does. I could try to win a pawn there with pawn takes pawn, but I lose the initiative. So I decided just to play d6. There's some disadvantage. You know, if he's taking back this way, I'm taking this way, I'm taking back. I'm losing a little bit of my central pawn mass, in a sense, so it's just that b6. Like, b6 isn't bad either, but white gets control of the b file with rook b1. So I'm kind of on the fence about it, honestly. Playing b6 is nice to increase the central control, but d6 also develops my bishop. I've got ideas of playing bishop g4, which is kind of unpleasant for white, given that he's played h4. Yeah, DST, it's a great idea. I need some money for my poker bankroll. Isn't Carlsen over 2,900 in blitz? Probably. Almost anything under GM is a dime a dozen. It's a lot to pay out. Absolutely. Well, I mean, all the titles have been devalued under Ilumjinov. Under Ilumjinov's FIDE. Significantly. I mean, the creation of the Candidate Master title was really just a scheme to make money. And he's devalued FIDE Master and IM and GM as well, by making it easier to achieve those titles. Of course, they want to make it easier to achieve the titles because that way they have more fees from people getting titles and stuff. Though there have been some weird rules created. Here in First Saturday in Budapest, there's an all long-running Grandmaster tournament series, and well, basically, is this okay to do this? Bishop g4 here? Rook b1? I don't see any reason why not. So the long-running tournament series here in Budapest, based on closed GM and IM tournament, FIDE changed the rules so that I think like 10-player tournaments need like 4 Grandmasters instead of 3. That's these closed 10-player round-robin tournaments. For Grandmaster norms, just they decided they need 4 Grandmasters instead of 3. It's just this most arbitrary like rule ever was created. It's very strange. It kind of goes against the whole FIDE strategy of making it easier to get titles. Now the organizer here in Budapest is having a hard time organizing Grandmaster tournaments because like it's hard enough to like pay 3 Grandmasters to play in like a norm tournament. Now you have to pay like 4 Grandmasters. That's almost like half the tournament is Grandmasters. It doesn't make any sense. It's just totally arbitrary. FIDE is just an abomination. It should be exterminated. But who's going to do it, you know? And then what happens if FIDE was disbanded? So we're in good shape here. The h4 pawn looks like it's pretty ripe in this position. Bishop takes f3. He's got tricks. He's got tricks to yeah, maybe I'm better off playing knight d4 and then picking off the pawn. But actually, yeah, I mean, he can't play bishop b5 check. But I'm just winning a pawn here, I guess. Looks good enough. Rook b1. Suppose I should protect my pawn. Can you fix FIDE if you become president of FIDE? Well, you know, the problem is, DST, that I guess modern sports organizations are corrupt by nature. So like every kind of maybe just organizations of any kind become corrupt after a time. Of course, if you hand control of it over to like a, political dictator, chances are the corruption is going to get worse more quickly than if it was just like an average Joe. But if we did create a new FIDE, a new federation for international chess, it would be a matter of time, I guess, until that organization became completely corrupt. Bishop takes. So the h4 pawn, I'm thinking of sacrificing my rook on a8 to try to mate white. I'm just not sure if I've got it or not. G takes f, queen takes h4, knight c7 check, king somewhere, knight takes a8, bishop e5. Does look kind of brutalish. It might just pull the full point, pull off a full point victory here. Took on d4. That was not expected. I thought we were going to see knight c7 check, but black probably checkmates white with bishop e5, queen h2, queen h1. So he decided to cut his losses and play like this. Well, will we walk over here to g7, or we just go to e7? So we'll just go to e7. The question was how to get my knight in the game quickly. Maybe knight f6, knight g4. The steamroller on the h file. We don't care if that pawn is on f3 or not. There's no need for knight e7. It's too slow a route. We need to go like f6, g4. So he defends the pawn. We move knight f6. Then he makes another defensive move. Well, rook e3, that's probably a good try. Under the circumstances, as good as anything. I don't see a mate. I'm going to have to decide between taking this rook and playing bishop e5. The bishop e5 becomes king f1, and his king sort of rolls up into e2. I don't see an easy way of checkmating him. Now we get the d file. The d file, for whatever that's worth. But he's still hanging on. It's not that easy to checkmate white. He's only down an exchange and a pawn. Just that the bishops are kind of struggling in this closed position. And actually, the variation I was talking about before is winning knight g4. That's why it was good to keep the h rook on h8. Surprise. That's the end of the ball game. Knight g4. So rook is developed from its original square. Nice motif. Bishop's not too good in this closed structure. So that was my plan originally, to play knight g4, and nice to actually execute it. Guys, we got another hour to go, so that's usually probably like 4 or 5 games. If you'd like to challenge, do so. Poppy's fixed his challenge, thanks for that. We have another challenge from Diovin. And this is going to be checkmate very, very soon. No escape along the H file. The vacuum of the H file. Thank you for the game. Aussie passes. Guys, we're going to play Max 123. We have had some interesting games with him lately. Simul on Sunday. Thank you for letting me have white most games, guys. Last game was not. He wasn't part of the program. Alright, well, we've played everything else. I think I haven't played G3 today. I've got 5 moves that I do play with white on a regular basis. We're trying to be 5-handed. Knight F3, E4, C4, D4, G3. I'm not including B3. I'll save that for Wednesdays and non-tournament games. Actually, I have to confess something, guys. I was actually thinking about playing the Dutch. I was really seriously recently having a conversation with someone about playing for a win as black against D4, and it seems like the Dutch would be an opening I could learn. There was a time back in the late 90s, early 2000, around 99, I think, 99, 98, 2000. I was seriously on the verge of starting to play the Dutch, but then for some reason, I was studying it and stuff. For some reason, I just canceled the program. I don't remember why. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like the Makaganov system against the King's Indians. Sometimes I start learning openings, and then at some point I just bail on the project. I don't think I ever actually played F5 in a tournament game. Oh, I was supposed to play black. You joined a bit late. Oh, Poppies has challenged me rated. Okay. Yeah, Poppies, you re-challenged me, but it's rated. Yeah, he needs to re-challenge me to non-rated. It's hard enough giving all my ideas away, but then playing rated too. Okay, so Max 123 goes with E6. This transposes to either the Catalan or a kind of ready Slav type of thing. But I don't really play G3 against the Slav, so it leaves me in a little bit of a quandary here as to what to do. We can play Queen C2 or B3. B3 is like a standard reti. I used to play the reti a lot when I was coming up as an expert. I remember I finished second in the U.S. Amateur Championship in 1989, or maybe it was 1990. In 1990, I was U.S. Amateur second place, and I was playing the ready a lot in those days when I was under 2200. B3. Can't watch Ginger GM anymore? Seeing him play the Dutch all the time got old. Well, yeah, it's an obsession for him. I mean, it's a little too much. Honestly, he should branch out. He's become yeah. Well, I don't think, he did himself a lot of good by only playing the Dutch. I mean, it's a little bit too much. And he also tries to play these variations that are kind of dubious. Honestly, if I played the Dutch, I would play the Leningrad. I don't really think that the Stonewall is playable, but it's not that great. And, I mean, if you look at the serious professionals, I mean, I know that the Stonewall is playable. Carlsen's even played it. I just don't really like it stylistically. I'm talking about playing the Leningrad. It's the only, real, in my opinion, the only really interesting and dynamic Dutch for black. There wouldn't be any question, and I'm not going to play some crappy system like Simon Williams recommends with D6 and E6 or whatever. It's kind of gimmicky and weak. I mean, I really don't believe in that stuff. It's okay, you can get away with it, but I wouldn't want to play it with black. Some of the variations he recommends, even A5, are practically refuted. So, I mean, I don't mean to diss Simon Williams, but he's way too obsessed with the Dutch. Here we go. Well, now it's kind of like a Dutch, just he hasn't played F5. This looks like Looks like I'm transposing into a sort of standard closed Catalan. But black was threatening to play e5. I don't know what to do, you know. I don't really want to let him play e5. So, yeah, there's no question. If I play the Duchess to Leningrad. I was playing in Harkine. No, yeah, in Harkine. No. Zalakarosh in June, and it's a big tournament. And Brian Smith was there, and he works with me on chesslecture.com. We know each other pretty well, but Brian was like playing this old Hungarian IM who was really, 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 really solid. And Brian like wanted to win with black, and I was like, wow, that's not an easy guy to beat, even if he's like pretty old, because he draws almost all of his games and very experienced. And then I saw the game, and like Brian Smith played the Leningrad Dutch, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. I thought like he always plays the Nimzo or like other stuff, maybe King's Indian, but not the Dutch. And I went up to him after the game, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. I didn't know you played the Leningrad. And he was like, no, I don't play it. This is the first game I ever played the Leningrad Dutch. But Brian just like slaughtered the guy in like 25 moves. And I mean, the power of preparation, I guess, came into play. The other guy like prepared, but he had no idea like it would be a Dutch. So bishop b4 check now. Well, I guess we just play knight bd2, and that's fine. So, yeah, your first Leningrad Dutch, you just slaughter a solid IM. That's pretty good. Your sensei advised you to learn the Stonewall Dutch against d4. Your sensei is not my sensei. There was this guy, a master, FIDE master, Mark Lyle, who was playing in the last tournament I played in, and he's playing the Stonewall Dutch, which is fine. You know, I don't personally like it, but whatever. You know, it's a decent opening. It's pretty solid for black, kind of boring and closed. But he chose to play it against some guys that I thought was a very bad decision, like this old Russian international master who was rated like 2000, who might be a sandbagger, but you know, he was like an old school positional Russian player, you know, and Lyle decides to play like the Stonewall Dutch against him, and he didn't really understand. I tried to tell him after the games, like, dude, you know, you don't play the Stonewall Dutch against like old school, old Russian masters, you know, because they studied all the games of like Botvinnik and Petrosian. You know, this is not the kind of player that, you know, it's advantageous to play the Stonewall Dutch against. You play the Stonewall Dutch against like a young tactical player who, you know, likes open positions or something. But Lyle just insisted on playing it like regardless of who his opponent was, which I just didn't think it was a very good practical decision. You really should be more flexible and think about, you know, the style of your opponent, how that matches up with the opening you're playing. I mean, this like 67-year-old IM who like was born on like watching Petrosian play the white side of the Stonewall Dutch is not really the optimal opponent to play the Stonewall Dutch against. It's like playing against, like I said, Igor Feugl, some like uber strong strategic player. That's like just resigning. I mean, you might as well just resign. There was this guy. The last time I won the New England Open was a couple of years ago, and there was this master 2300 US player named Lawyer Times. He played the Stonewall Dutch against Feugl, and I was just like, dude, that's crazy. Feugl just ripped him apart. Like, it looked like Petrosian. It looked like Petrosian himself was playing white, you know, in the Stonewall Dutch. It was. You really, really, really have to think about the opening you're playing and the opponent you're playing, and you know, does my opening system make sense against this particular opponent? Not just like play your opening, you know, no matter what. I mean, if you have just one opening, yeah, you're behind the times. I mean, you need to have more than one opening, but if you have just one opening, you have just one opening. There's nothing you can do. But if you have more than one opening, You need to think about, you know, how it matches up. What should you play against d4 then? Well, it depends on you, you know, it depends on your style. You're more strategic, more tactical. Do you like closed positions or not? How strong are you tactically? We have to decide queen h4 or queen e2. I need some water. I've got the hiccups. I think queen h4 is just walking into bishop e7. So queen e2 it is. Probably. Max123 has played pretty solidly against me. Maybe queen c2 should have been in the mix. In this particular position for several reasons. It would support c5. It also gives me knight g5 tricks in a lot of variations. I think this was a mistake. Queen c2. I had a similar game in that same New England Open I won. Well, if I had queen c2 now, black would be under serious pressure. As it stands, we seem to have a technical problem. You could sack a pawn here, but I'm not sure objectively that it's enough compensation or not. Just don't see it being enough compensation. Is it too late for queen c2? Tempo down. c5, take. We play it like a tempo down. Queen c2. We also play the more natural, like knight e5 in this position. I'm not sure what it does objectively, knight e5. If I play queen c2 tempo down, you go there, I take, you take back. Queen c2 tempo down doesn't look right. Black could play c5 and maybe take with the queen on c5. Actually, in that position, I thought. Now we're looking for like some kind of tiny advantage. Think like Gennady Sisonko, Catalan. Good ending with knight versus bishop and the queenside majority or something, please. There's a famous game, Sisonko-Karpov, where like Karpov won. Trade all the pieces here except for like two bishops and bishop and knight for white, and like Karpov goes bishop c8, keeps his bishop pair and wins the ending. Like two bishops against bishop and knight. Black wants to play c5 to free this piece on b7. He has to calculate, you know, if it's possible or not. This looks like a better move. Do I have any tactics with c5 now? Perhaps. You can try it. Looks fun. Fun is good. Maybe not sound. But it's like a blitz game where we don't have a lot of time, so I thought, even if it's not sound, it's still fun, right? Whoa. Well, that's That's a serious positional mistake. But maybe black's okay. Oh, this is not good. You really need to take the pawn. Take your chances there. I didn't see any clear win for white after you take on c5, take back. It's just a kind of complicated position. Now I think white has some kind of spatial advantage. It's a little bit of a passive solution for black. Okay, still it's not that easy, admittedly. We've got d6. Support point. That's what some people call it. That's real ancient. Yeah, but it was a great classic game. b4? Do we need b4? Sassanko was the Catalan master. Actually, he lost his ending to Karpov. I mean, he should never have lost. It was totally drawn. But a very instructive ending. Sassanko thought he was like trading down into like a drawn ending or something where he's a tiny bit better. And Karpov just avoided the exchange of bishops with bishop c8. And it should still be a draw, but Sassanko managed to find a way to lose with white. I mean, in that time, it was like when Karpov was really strong and everyone was intimidated. I guess Sassanko's getting up there. He doesn't play. It's kind of like Kavalek. He just sort of quietly retired from playing. Yeah, nice trick with bishop a6, but I was on high alert about that possibility. Now, well, it's a tempting choice between the two possibilities here. Tough call, man, really. All right. Max like to trade white square bishops, like blockade d7 with a knight, and oh, that's a good move. Darn, that's a good move. Max is like, now I'll trade white square bishops. He's got the blockade. The story is slightly different now. I don't know if queen c6 is really good or not. Still not that easy to break it down. This extra pawn could go a long way. Man, defending like a phenom. do I break it down? Gotta be a way. Oh, that's the way in. He eventually made a mistake. Max 123 is pretty tough. We have had a number of struggles trying to take him down. But generally speaking, this was a good fight. I think I made a serious error there with queen e2 instead of queen c2. Okay, guys, we have time for a few more games, probably like 3. He's still commenting on chess. He also beat the kid in the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer. And the game he beat him is using the chess master. I'll give you some piece of information, dude. He's not the only one whose game is in the chess master game. I guess it depends on what version you have, but Sparkle Horse has a game in there too. All right, I'll be forever memorialized by Josh Waitzkin's analysis of my beautiful win against him. So I have that in common with Sasanko. We're playing against Popitz. I played c4, played d6. Well, knight f3. That's as good as anything. I was actually thinking about playing bishop g4 against one of my opponents last 2 weeks ago when I played in the tournament. Not a position, not a system I really believe in for black, but I thought I was desperate to find something kind of like complex and different. But Popitz is going into a much more standard variation for black. I don't know which version of Chess Master my game is in there, but Whiteskin does like multimedia commentary. It wasn't the greatest game in the world, but I remember I was white and I didn't get an advantage out of the opening. Then later, I outplayed him. Alright, so yeah, so it's one of these Dutch big clamp type of things. I remember I have a pretty good score in this setup, but once I lost to a Spanish grandmaster, actually half Spanish because he was American too. What's his name now? Arizmendi Martinez. It's ironic because Arizmendi, like when I was a kid in New Jersey, he was like a local player in New Jersey, and then he like moved back to Spain and became a GM. I was surprised, like he wasn't even that strong when he lived in the United States. And then a little bit later I was like, whoa, that's the same guy who was like playing in New Jersey when I was a kid. Alright, bishop g5. Arizmendi beat me once with black in this line. That's the only game I think I ever lost. I'm usually pretty comfortable in these setups, if I'm not dropping a knight on g5 as I did once. That's a different line though, where black plays knight c6 instead of c6. I've had fairly good results. It's kind of like a weird close Sicilian with colors reversed, but black's position is played by some pretty strong players. This variation has a quite decent reputation for black. It's not a bad setup. It's a very aggressive kind of variation. If you check out the book Dynamic Chess Strategy by Mihai Suba, he likes to play the English basically all the time. And he has one game in his book Dynamic Chess Strategy where he played somebody pretty strong. I think it was Timon, I'm not sure, where he just decimated them. But basically Popitz is playing the recommended setup for black. There is one other rated game challenge you couldn't see who it was that quick. Oh, yeah, FM Tactesian doesn't seem to pay attention. Now he changed it. Okay, he heard you. GCEDW. I usually call him GCEW. A. Morales and Tactesian. I call him Morales. I don't know how you pronounce it in French. Morales. How do you pronounce this name in French? A. Morales. I mean, I'm used to speaking Spanish a little bit. I don't really do the French pronunciations very well. I know there's a French GM with that name. Like Giles Morales. H4. You say like Murais. How do you say that in French? H4. Well, this is what I usually do. I don't commit my king. We have 3 options. Castle's kingside. Walk the king over to g2. Actually, 4 options. Castle's kingside. Walk the king, Gurgenidze style, to g2. Castle queenside, or French defense style, leave the king on d2. So there's all sorts of possibilities for my king in this position. Now knight e6. And then I've got to think about whether... I don't like taking on e6 and helping him develop. I'm thinking about like g3 here. Calculating the ramifications of g3, knight takes g5, h takes g5. Actually, that should be pretty good for white, I would think. So the strategy that I'm employing here is basically mirror image, reversed Gurgenidze Caro-Kann. You get the bad bishop outside the pawn chain. You play like h4, in the case of Gurgenidze Caro-Kann, h5, g6. And black's a little overextended with e4. And then the king can walk, as I said, to like g2. Or, depending on the situation, we can play king d2 or castle queen side. But black's position is viable. I was talking about Suba and dynamic chess strategy, and Suba or Shuba. I'm not sure the Romanian... I'm really good with pronunciations, guys. I'm not sure the Romanian pronunciation. Some people say Shuba, but it's weird for me because that sounds like a Hungarian pronunciation to me. And I don't know if it's like Hungarians telling me that it's pronounced like a Hungarian. It's a weird name. But anyway, I need all the help I can get with my pronunciations. Do I speak Russian? Yeah, I mean, Morales obviously has a Spanish, it has a Spanish history or whatever. But, you know, I mean, the border is obviously, there is a border between France and Spain, and I'm sure, like, this name is kind of on both sides of the fence in some cases. So I just thought of the French Grandmaster with that name. Obviously, there are Spanish versions that are spelled differently, that are similar, like Morales. But anyway, back to chess. It's... I always enjoy playing these lines, but the Suba approach was to undermine e4. So he was like not really doing the blockade strategy. What I did, he found a way to play like a very quick g4 and undermine the e4 pawn, and that makes a lot of sense. Like black can't go knight g4 here because he'll drop bishop takes g4, pawn takes g4, knight takes e4. I mean, maybe he could, in fact, and win the pawn on g5. But it's more complicated than he did it anyway. Okay, so here the problem is I have a number of moves. Knight takes e4, bishop takes g4, and g6. Rook takes h7. Anybody? Can you hear me now? G6 I thought was interesting because I can hit the rook with tempo. Maybe g6 even could win material. I mean, g6 is pretty nasty. It may just win a pawn. The odds are he should play a safer move like knight e8 or something. Now knight takes e4, knight takes e3 is good for black. So we've got to eliminate this guy and go pawn hunting. But it's not just any pawn. It's an uber pawn. And one can make an argument that black has some kind of compensation here. But take care, because it's a very important pawn, giving me a rather powerful central phalanx, and I like it. He also has chronic problems with g4, so that's going to be, he's got to keep this protected at all times, the g4 pawn. There's the possibility of my pawns avalanching in the center. He has two bishops, but it's a very close structure, so they're not the optimal two bishops like in an open Sicilian or something like that. My knights have fairly good play. And now for my next trick. We could consider like queen a4 trading queens. Black is going to win this pawn back in a lot of lines, though. Bishop g5, chop the knight on f4, and win the pawn on g6. So it's not that easy. I have a tactical move, rook h5. Not really looking that good. Plays bishop g5 anyway. So queen b3. Am I thinking about castling queenside? Where am I putting my king now? Things have changed a lot in this position. Position has changed a lot. Bishop on f5 is making it impossible for me to actually safely castle queenside at the moment. e4 is worth considering, but I can't do it because of bishop takes e4. So queen d2, queen e2. Where am I putting my king? Queen d2. Bishop g5, probably next. No, if worst comes to worst, I can play queen a4 and try to trade queens. And I shouldn't really be worse. Kind of running out of time, so I'm going to bail and play the practical move. The king isn't all that safe with the queens on the board. The idea of king g2 not so appealing here with the light square weaknesses that I have. But this is shaping up to be quite a complicated little endgame. Two bishops against two knights. Knight on a4 is bad. We're losing the pawn back. That's pretty much what we expected. But he's got to give up his bishop pair to win it. So life is okay, I guess. Maybe take back with the pawn, the f pawn. I mean the e pawn. It's a tragedy in a sense, but I'm a little bit wary about this position. With him having a lot of passed pawns along the h5, I think it's much safer to take back this way. I'd like to play for a win with g takes f, but honestly, We're a little bit theoretically better. His bishop's kind of bad. I might be able to single off that, isolate that G pawn from the pack and win it. It's not so easy though. This pawn might require defense at some point. But black played pretty well overall. Adequate. I feel like I wimped out with Queen A4, but I watched the clock ticking and I didn't really have a great idea. So Rook E3. Can we reestablish our pawn mass in the center? I was fantasizing about playing like knight to D1, but I can't give up control of the E4 square, I don't think. So, that's how it's going to be. Interesting. Yeah, I think this is good. This is a precarious position. Actually, I expected D5 there. Now F5. E4 is a bit more flexible. He's got no time for H4. Wow, G5. I'm going to go for it here. F6, FF6. Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Puppets is 2200. Yeah, but this is probably a mistake. I thought he had much more dangerous moves there. King E6 instead. Now he's very passive. Wow, so much for passive. But is this enough to save it? F7. I guess this is nothing for me. Oh, so now he's better? I see. Yeah, I'm just dropping a pawn, right. Okay. Pretty good endgame technique there. Well, obviously I shouldn't have lost. Well, that was quick. First game takes me out. Nice. Or not. I guess it's a draw. Maybe not. It's a draw. Okay, interesting game. GCW is up next. Guys, we have time for 2 more games maximum. Not draw. 0-1. Good call. Now we are white. Knight f3. We mixed it up quite a bit here. Inside the square of the pawn. I don't know, maybe black was winning if he played technically better earlier. But at the end, certainly not. G3, it's another King's Indian attack. GCEW, EDW, I call him EW because just it's faster to say. 4 letters rather than 5. It is a player who's played some enormously interesting games against me. Now knight c6. I haven't seen this in a while. That's a crafty move. Do you remember crafty? I guess that's Stockfish is crafty. A5 is winning. Why is A5 winning? Knights and Pries. Knight and Pries. Why would A5 be winning? What possible difference would that make? My king is moving back and forth between E3 and F3 and E3 and F3. I don't understand, like, how does A5 win? I'm not in Zugzwang there. My king is going back and forth between the 2 squares. I always have the ability to create a passed pawn. A5 is not winning for black in that position. Maybe earlier he was winning. So I'm trying to remember this now. Knight c6. That's actually a very rare move, but a good line, as far as I recall. Should I play c4? c4 must be critical. I had a cool win with rook takes h6 before, of course. I'm like, Magnus would find that. Rook takes h6. Wow. I had a good game, but I let it drift. Then I had a clear advantage in the ending, and let him. But he came up with KG counterplay with g5, and then he took on g3, which surprised me. I certainly shouldn't lose, but I managed to find a way to like drop a pawn. What? I just prefer to be. What are you talking about? San Lisa. There's no females in the internet. Looking for love on the internet is the right place. GCW, man. I mean, C4. Any other move is really, really weak. I think you're supposed to take. I'm pretty sure. That's the way it's done. E6 is playable, but that looks passive for black. But it was a good fight last game. In the first moment, I thought I was lost too at the end because I didn't realize I was in the square of the pawn. But I just saw an endgame like that last week. And no, the a5 thing doesn't matter. It's really earlier he has to play more accurately. Probably was winning for black, yeah. So now, what do I do here? Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. What's white's plan? Like, the knight on c6 is bad, but maybe we go with the... I mean, b3 makes some sense. That's probably like the Kramnik response. b3, knight e4, bishop b2, with a really awkward, closed, difficult to play position. And then here I'm going to play the lame bishop g5. Just simple position. Keep it simple. It's a fast game. No bad bishops for me. Closed position. The two knights are as good as the bishop pair. Rook c1, e3. Well, e3 is pretty standard. Reinforcing the pawn chain. We might do some Yasser Seirawan type of maneuvers. It's similar to the structure, the famous game that Yasser won against Kasparov, which he actually didn't play that well, but Kasparov made some mistakes. The Grunfeld with bishop g5. This is a Grunfeld, and I played bishop g5, so it's kind of similar and exchanged on f6. But that's a different line. White plays like bishop g5 on move 5. But that's actually a good endgame to see. That last game where I had a draw there. It's not very common that you have that, two pawns for the other guy that are passed, and it's still a draw. You have to be exactly in the square of both pawns. If one of them is advanced one more square, I'm completely lost. But good to remember that is a drawing motif. Now GCW went with knight a5. It looks suspicious. I mean, knight e7, probably is the way you want to go. I don't know when you want to play it, but I mean, bishop g4 is a safe move if you want to trade down and make a draw or something. And then the other possibility, I thought, knight e7, c6 type of stuff. But knight a5, I'm not really sure that's a good square for that knight, because it's not like I've played b4. I mean, if I play b4 and you're guaranteed to have an outpost here, then I'm sure that knight a5 is fine. But the fact that I haven't played b4 yet makes it look a little suspicious to me. Here I go, putting my knight on a different square. My original plan was, like, as I said, knight e1, knight d3, and knight d2, playing against his knight. Looks like a good idea, though, under the circumstances. Now b4. Well, we have an improved... Is there any better move here? Queen a4 or something? Queen a4. Queen a4, knight c6. Actually, has a lot of tricks. I'll just play it straight. Well, he's going to get back to where he should have been in the first place at some point. But I don't know, man. GCW consistently, this player gives me very, very tough games. He only has 2.5 out of 13 against me. Now he's blundered, looks like. Mostly in the simul's, though. He's played very tough. But this is this is a concrete blunder, right? Right? Are you sure? Bishop takes d5, bishop takes d4, bishop takes e6, bishop takes c3. Yeah, I mean, that's winning a pawn. But there's also bishop takes d5, bishop takes d4, pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, queen c4, when I don't see what black really has there. I don't want to pin myself with, like, knight takes d5, self-pin. It's a little complicated. Maybe it's possible, because I'm threatening knight takes f6 check. For a computer, it's no problem. So unfortunately what? I could even take with the queen here. Queen takes d5, knight takes b4, queen takes b7, rook b8. Slightly awkward. Knight takes d5. I mean, it's not a good knight, you know, typically blocking the pawn on c7, so I'm not sure. Queen takes d5, knight takes b4. It gets kind of active going into, like, d3 later on. Although I wouldn't mind trading queens when I'm up a clear pawn like this. It's usually the right policy to trade pieces when you're up pawns. Guys, next to last game, we're going to play one more game after this. Bishop e7. You want to sell your bishops now. Well, I just said we should trade pieces when we're up pawns. Nothing wrong with it. Simplest policy. This is really a huge advantage for me to be up a clear central pawn. It should be winning. Black doesn't have any serious compensation of any kind. It was a nice knight on d5, but not that stable. I might have to put it on f4, and then he can chase it around with g5. Better to just trade it down. We're clear pawn up. And not just any pawn, like the most important pawn on the board. Complications? Any complications here? Knight e5, queen c2. Double attacking knight and pawn on c7. A rook c5. Actually, queen moves, as I mentioned, are good. But typically, tripling is better than doubling. Doesn't allow rook e5. Knight e5, it's a knight, right? Knight e5 is out. So he has only b8 if he wants to move his knight, or a7. The wonderful b8 and a7. You guys are having some interesting conversations there in the Twitch stream. My medical knowledge is not that good. Rook c5. Guys, I'm going to be streaming Wednesday and Thursday, and Friday I'm leaving to play poker at EPT Prague. We will be back on the 19th, no, the 20th of December, Monday. No, Tuesday, the 20th December, h4. You know, now that I've got the knight coming to f3, rook on c5, guarding against this, I don't mind playing h4. You don't want to see h5, h4, h3. We've got 5 on 3 on the king side. My king should be safe. Guys, if you want to contact me for training or lessons or any kind of questions or even suggestions about the stream, any chess-related correspondence, please send an email to my chess email, which is videochesstrainer@gmail.com. All the info is in the Twitch stream. Info also, I think, on my lichess account info. But we will be back tomorrow and Thursday as well, streaming here 10 a.m. till 12:30 CET, Central European Time. Night on Pre said, good luck with my poker. I'm a little bit worried because I haven't played much tournament poker this year. And so, although I play every week, cash and sit and go, it's kind of weird. You know, in the last 5 years I was playing a lot, and it's like not playing chess for a while and then playing chess, but I think we'll do all right. h4. There it is, knight a7. Everybody's favorite square for a knight. Once I did that against Rafael Leitao. One of my only Queen's Gambit accepteds ever in my life. Maxim Dlugi, what would he have said? It wasn't pretty. Minority attack. Try not to put knights on a7 unless your name is Richie Rapport. Some other maniacally creative player can get away with it, but I often talk about like knight 3, you know, these squares being bad for knights, but the a7 square it's another level of badness. But honestly, GCW didn't have a choice. I mean, it was, if he wants to unpin, it's b8 or a7. So roving the 5th rank here. We got the defense. The defense rests. And a nasty threat. He's starting f6, winning a rook. Look at that. Never mind. I was just kidding. Just kidding about the whole thing. It wasn't really, I didn't mean it, you know. It was just a joke about rook g5. Trying to steal that pawn with check. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. What can we do? He's keeping me at bay. Knight c4. Kind of a provocative move. Maybe going a little too far with a knight c4. Let's try to stay in the vicinity of the king's side. I think knight f3, much more solid option than knight c4. But GCW, he's pretty tough, man. I mean, really, really hangs on doggedly. Now d5 is an attempt. We don't have much time. Sacking a pawn here. This was probably a little bit, maybe a little over ambitious. Okay. I don't know if I've whoa, I did not see that. Rook e7. Look how cagey he is. It's kind of hard to believe that he's not higher rated. I've said this before, but I mean, just 1800, and always it's like trying to pull teeth to beat him. It reminds me of our former moderator, actually. It reminds me of playing, what's his name? Guitar player. Playing this guy. He's exactly like guitar player. Look how well he's playing in blitz. And his blitz rating is really pretty low. I think that's what I was thinking earlier. It reminded me of a player, GCW. And our former moderator, guitar player, comes to mind. Well, I guess he's still a moderator, but he's rarely around. Kind of plays a very similar type of game. There's mate. Alright guys, last game. We don't have much time. 5 minutes left, but I'm going to play a Murales FM Tactisian. Not going to get to play you today. We missed you yesterday too. Snooze, you lose. I guess we're starting pretty early for most people here, or late if you're in the United States. It's Morales. If Morales is here, I'm gonna play this game. If not, more luck is required in tournament than in cash. It's it's easier. I think it's just different. I don't agree with DSTs. There's more skill. I mean, there's like unlimited skill in any game. It's not like there's more skill in cash than tournament poker. Maybe you can turn it around and say that there's more luck involved. That would be a more politically correct way of saying it. But alright, what are we playing? We're playing d5. g6. The bird's opening. 27 past midnight in New Zealand. Yep. Played c4. Well, this f4 move, you know, it doesn't really gel with c4 very much. And I could certainly take on c4 and make him play a kind of Reti type of thing where f4 doesn't really fit in with the rest of the setup. Or we can go d4. So it's really a matter of what you want to do here. how aggressive you want to be. But d4, c6, it's all good. Just depends on your style. I'm not really a Slav player. I'm a tempo down, though, in a Dutch type position. That's the only thing. If d4, e3, I mean, what's white going to play here? I mean, fundamentally, okay, this is interesting. Tough decision, you know, to take on e3, and then like, what is it, an endgame where white's a little weakened, but not something real special for black? Or do I want to play, you know, full-blooded chess here, I guess. We're just going to pretend we're like Igor Novikov I mentioned yesterday. We're going to do the Igor Novikov type of impression. I'm going to omit c5 for reasons I won't reveal. I have a hard job watching the chat and meanwhile drawing with GM Chessstat and Asima. Wow, congratulations, Jeroen. Yeah, I know it's hard to beat you. Aussie Passes absolutely didn't spam the chat. You're very polite. Guys, last game. We'll be back tomorrow. Alright, so... Well... What was my plan here? Okay. I decided to play this like it's check Benoni, colors reversed, which it is, basically. But I reserved c5 for my knight. That's why I didn't play c5. And we're putting pressure on the base of his pawn chain. There are variations like this with the colors reversed. So d4, c5, d5, f5. Some people call it the hold the phone for a second here. We don't have knight b4 because of knight e1. Some people call it the what's it called? And it's an English name. Do you know what it is? d4, f5, c4, c5. I forget now. I knew what it was 2 weeks ago, but I forgot the name now. New Zealand person. Clarendon Court, that's it. I spent 15 years in Boston, and I should know Clarendon. It's like one of the most... He was like an artist, a famous historical artist in Boston, and Clarendon... No, I'm thinking of Copley, actually. Now I'm getting confused. Clarendon... I forget who Clarendon was. Another historical person. But Clarendon is a name in Boston, so I should remember that. Alright, Clarendon Court. Reversed. There's a lot of ways I could have played it, you know, with, like I said, the Slav. This is very, very full-blooded. All the pieces on the board, very closed. Long game. It's gonna be tense. You could also call it a Franco Benoni. Actually not, because he didn't play e6. I don't know. It's the weird Reverse Benoni. Thursday is Thirsty Thursday, but will see me drunk. CM, is that either Crisis Manager or Chess Master? CM should be like a dollar sign next to that. Or euros. I don't know what kind of currency FIDE is dealing in. Maybe rubles. I don't know. But okay, the US Chess Federation has a lot of silly titles too, Life Master and stuff. Okay, B4 is on the table now, so we're not allowing that. And then there's this thing where I can do knight B4 sometimes. This position, it's not that big a deal because white can always defend E1. I don't know, what would a really strong positional player do here? I mean, one of my intentions is probably to play F6 at some point, just kind of like keep the position. Knight B4, knight E1. I don't see any tactics for black. We could play rook B1 and B5 on the queen side. Looks like a kind of reasonable idea. This is the Grigo-esque rook A6, rook B6. It also has bishop A3. So bishop A3 is slightly concerning. I wonder if I should seriously consider F5 here. It's kind of risky positionally. How am I going to meet bishop A3? I'm just going to play B6. Alright. I don't know what to do. I'm going with rook B8. Yeah. That was clearly a very real possibility. The bishop A3. We got the rook off the long diagonal. That's a positive. Nightmarishly complicated strategic position. But white, you know, if you play this kind of system against weaker players, you're going to score a lot of points with white, I would think. I'm certainly almost getting lost in the position. I guess instead of rook B8, I could play knight A6. It's like a fianchetto Benoni. That's also, I mean, I don't like going away from the center in general, but I think knight A6 would be a pretty standard type of maneuver. The problem is we don't have knight E6 because of F5 on the king's side. We don't have that square. That's one of the reasons why I was seriously thinking about F5, kind of creating a haven for my knight to go to E6. But F5, I finally rejected because of E5, just shutting down my bishop on G7. Oh, drunken chess. Drunken chess where you have glasses of alcohol for the pieces, right? Maybe that's something I should try. Live on the stream. You have to revert to a trick that an old fraternity brother of mine Very, very sly guy. He used to start throwing shots over his shoulder when you weren't looking. You know, I mean, that's the kind of tactic you have to resort to, you know, to survive in one of these drunken chess type of games. Secretly throwing away the alcohol. Impressive game by White. I really like this. Well, what should we do? Just take? Man, this is a pretty impressive system, I would say. In any case, all right, I'm going back to the long diagonal. Do I want to do that? Maybe not. Running out of time. Mechanically develop. Guy's pretty good. Positionally, he's good. He's got the better structure. Well, he doesn't have the better structure, but he could easily get the better structure in a few moves there. But now it feels like this is a fairly significant minor concession. I'm going to make illegal moves here, and that's pretty insane. Going after my pawn on c5. Where am I going again? What's my name? c6. I mean, it was a little weird blocking my bishop, but I needed to find a way to protect b6. Still, I think black's okay, even with White having a passed a pawn. It's very hard for him to control the dark squares. He has some weaknesses on dark squares, but I think objectively it's about equal. Although there's ways I could end up clearly worse. There are certain endings where I could be in really bad shape here. I have to be careful not to trade down to one of those endings. White's been very, very careful. A strong strategic player. But I've been careful too. It's like Karyak and Carlsen. Some are more careful than others. What about this move? Stopping anything from going to a5. Otherwise he's going to trick me and like get his queen to a5 and then get the knight back to b3 and win my pawn on c5. Really impressive strategic game by White. Not your average 2000 player on lichess. I mean, maybe I just played to his strengths in this game, but I feel like I'm playing with someone who's pretty good. Now it's down to increments and 30 seconds each. Well, we gotta get to b4. My poor dark squared bishop. We both have really bad bishops. Mine feels worse than his. Oh, look at this now. We have rook b4. He blundered. Rook takes a4. Or not. Yeah, that's a blunder, no? Maybe not. Maybe this is some kind of sophisticated trick. And why am I saying this is a blunder? I tricked him into thinking it was a blunder, but why is this a blunder? Queen takes. Final position. I'm not even like winning. He lost on time. He's actually better. So rook takes a4 is a blunder by me. I mean, I'm clearly better if I don't take on a4. So I make a bad move and he like loses on time. I have to play e6 or e5. e5. Black is slightly better. So ironically, the worst move I played this game like gives him a clear advantage. Queen takes a4, queen takes a4, rook takes a4, rook takes a4, knight takes c5, and only move rook a7. When it's a torturous position where I'm close to lost. Rook b8 check, bishop f8, now e5 or something. And I'm lucky if I can hang on. Peter doesn't want to allow e5 maybe. This is a silly blunder by me. Anyway, guys, I'm going to be back tomorrow. I'm running late today. I thank you for joining me. Please tune in and check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. If you enjoyed the stream, you can afford to donate via PayPal. I appreciate the support, and those of you who have done so, the link for PayPal is on the Twitch site and on YouTube as well. And again, we'll be back Wednesday and Thursday, 10 a.m. CET, and then I'm out of here for a while until the 20th of December. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks, Jeroen, for moderating. And we'll be back tomorrow. Bye-bye.